The Millhaven Arts and Makers Fair opened every year on the last Saturday of June, and Nora Caldwell had not missed one in a decade. She came for the kettle corn and the hand-thrown bowls, in that order. She came with a canvas tote and her reading glasses on a chain and a deliberate calm that was the luxury of a woman who had spent 30 years shushing other people's children and was finally done with it. She came, if she was honest, for the corner booth at the south end of Craftsman Row, the one with the blue canvas shade and the hand-lettered sign that read, "Ose Ceramics," and the woman behind it who remembered her name every time. She arrived that morning at 8:15, early enough to watch the vendors set up, early enough to be there when the fair opened, and the first real light came off the fountain in the square. She parked and walked the long way around, past the food trucks and the stage where someone was still adjusting a microphone, and turned the corner onto the row expecting to see Adaize Ose already there, already unboxing, already placing each piece the way she always did, largest at the back, smallest at the front, everything angled so the glaze caught the light. What she saw instead stopped her on the pavement. Adaize was there, but she was not at the corner booth. She was standing 15 feet away from it, beside a folding table she had not set up, with both hands folded on her printed confirmation sheet, and an expression so composed it made Nora's chest tighten just to look at it. In her space. The corner booth with the blue shade already staked, which Adaize had reserved and paid for in February. A young man with a clipboard was directing two white vendors with a canopy they were still unwrapping. Nora stopped. She watched for a moment, because she had been a librarian, and librarians read a room before they walk into it. She watched Adaize's face, which was steady. She watched the man with the clipboard, who was not looking at Adaize anymore, and then she walked over. She arrived just as the conversation resumed. "I've explained this," the young man said. He had a lanyard that read Logistics, Millhaven Arts Coalition, and the slightly frantic energy of a person who had been given a task that was bigger than his preparation. His name, Nora would learn later, was Darren. "There was a system issue overnight. Some bookings got shuffled. We're placing you in overflow on the west end. It's a good spot, high foot traffic. My confirmation number is 4471B, Adaize said. She said it the way she said everything, level, unhurried, as if she had all day, which in fact she did. The corner booth at the south end of Craftsman Row, reserved February 14th, paid in full. That is the number on your sheet." "Ma'am, I understand your frustration." "I'm not frustrated." She said it without heat. "I'm standing where I've stood for 9 years. I'd like to continue doing that." Darren looked down at his clipboard, then back up. He did not look at the confirmation she was holding toward him. The overflow section is a great space. A lot of vendors actually prefer it because of the shade. "My booth has shade," Adaize said, and she looked at the blue canvas shade she had shipped ahead, and which was already staked above the corner booth that was now being occupied by a canopy that belonged to someone else. She did not say anything more about that. She set her printed confirmation on the folding table beside her, smoothed it once with her palm, and stood quietly where she was. Darren moved off to deal with something else. He had 7 vendors arriving in the next 20 minutes, and a stage sound issue, and a food truck permit that wasn't printing right. He moved off, and seemed, in moving, to believe the matter was settled. Adaize did not move to overflow. She stood at her folding table, in the space between where she was and where she was supposed to be, and she waited with the patience of a woman who had been throwing clay since she was 19 years old, and understood, at a cellular level, that pressure applied steadily and without panic was the only thing that ever changed the shape of anything. Nora watched all of this. Then she walked to the nearest booth, Linda Marsh's Honey and Preserves, 6 stalls north, and told Linda what she had just seen. Linda Marsh was 61 and had the hands of a beekeeper and the patience of no one. She came out from behind her table and looked down the row at Adaize standing with her folded confirmation and said, in a voice that carried 9 years, that was all she said. But she did not begin setting out her jars. Word moved the way it always moved at the fair, the way it moved at any gathering of people who have known each other long enough to speak in shorthand. It went from Linda to Gus Ferreira, who did metalwork and had the booth beside Adaize's for 7 of those 9 years. It went from Gus to the Okonkwo family, who did textiles and had driven 2 hours that morning and were not going to spend the day being indignant, but were also, quietly, not going to start unboxing until Adese's situation was resolved. It went, because fairs are porous, and customers arrive early, and drift down the row before the gates are fully open, to a woman named Harriet, who had 3 of Adese's pieces in her kitchen, and had been planning to buy a 4th today, and who now stood with her arms crossed at the entrance to the row, and declined to move further in until she understood what was happening. Darren came back 20 minutes later, clipboard in hand, moving fast. He found Adese still standing at her folding table. He found approximately 11 people arranged in a loose half-circle around that table, not loudly, not aggressively, just present, the way a room is present when it has decided something. "Ms. Osie," he said, and his voice had changed slightly, the way voices change when the audience has grown. "I understand there's been some confusion. If you'll come with me to the admin tent, we can sort out the paperwork." "My paperwork is here," Adese said. She touched the printed sheet on the table. "Confirmation 4471D. South end of Craftsman Row. This is the south end of Craftsman Row." "I understand that, but the system—" "Then let's look at the system together," said Gus Ferreira, from Adese's right. He said it pleasantly. He meant it to be pleasant. It landed the way it landed. Darren looked at the half-circle. He looked at Adese. He looked down at his clipboard and found that the clipboard was not helping him. Nora had been standing at the back of the half-circle. She had not said anything yet, which was unusual for her, but she had been watching, and she had understood, without needing it explained, that the thing Adese needed from the people around her was not noise. It was presence. It was the quiet, unmistakable fact of being seen. She had also, in the last 10 minutes, quietly sent a text message to the one person she knew who sat on the Millhaven Arts Coalition organizing committee. Her name was Priscilla Vance, and she had been buying pottery from Adese's booth since the fair's 3rd year, and she was currently in the admin tent reviewing the day's schedule, and Nora's text said only, "Come to the south end of the row. Adese, now." Priscilla came. She was a small woman of 70, with white hair cropped close, and the brisk stride of someone who had chaired 14 annual meetings and lost patience for inefficiency around the time of the 8th. She walked down Craftsman Row, took in the scene in a single sweep, and said, "Darren, pull up the confirmed vendor list on the system, please. Booth 4471. Darren found the tablet. He opened the system. He stood there looking at it for a moment. Then he turned it so Priscilla could see. Booth 4471B. South End, Craftsman Row, corner position. Adese Osie, Osie Ceramics. Confirmed February 14th. Payment received in full. No flags, no reassignments, no system issue touching this record." "There's no shuffle," Priscilla said. She did not say it loudly. She was looking at the screen, not at Darren. "The record is clean." She turned to the 2 vendors who had been set up in Adekose's corner, a couple, early 40s, who had by this point understood that something had gone wrong, and were already beginning to detach their canopy from the stakes, with the particular efficiency of people who want to be helpful and would prefer to be elsewhere. She thanked them and pointed them toward the overflow section and apologized for the confusion. They went without complaint. They had no grievance. They had been directed there, and they left when they were told the direction was wrong. Then Priscilla walked to Adese's folding table. She picked up the printed confirmation and looked at it, the number, the date, the amount paid, the booth assignment, and set it back down. "I'm sorry," she said. "This should not have happened. Your booth is yours. It has been yours all morning." Adese looked at her for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you," and picked up the confirmation and tucked it into her bag and began, without further ceremony, to move her boxes toward the corner. The half-circle did not cheer. That is worth noting, because it would have been easy to cheer, and the moment had the shape of something that invites it. But what happened instead was quieter, and in some ways more complete. People simply moved. Linda Marsh went back to her jars and began setting them out. Gus Ferreira returned to his table and picked up where he'd left off. The Okonkwo family unfolded their first length of fabric. Harriet, at the entrance to the row, exhaled and walked in. The fair resumed, not with a flourish, but with the ordinary, collective motion of people getting back to what they came to do. Nora carried 3 of Adesi's boxes from the folding table to the corner booth. She did this because she was there, and because her hands were free, and because 10 years of buying pottery from someone creates a small intimacy that makes you want to be useful. She set the boxes down on the display table and stepped back. "I have a feeling," she said, "that the celadon pieces are in that one." "They are," Adese said. She was already kneeling to open it. "You've been waiting for them." "Since February," Nora said. The fair opened to the public at 9. By 9:15, Adese's corner booth had its first 3 customers, and the blue canvas shade was doing what it always did, catching the light at the angle she had, through 9 years of setup, learned it would catch it. Darren Witt spent the rest of the fair day in the admin tent. He was not dismissed, not fired on the spot, not made into a spectacle, but he was removed from vendor check-in. Priscilla made that decision at the tent within the hour, and his interaction with Adese was formally documented in the day's incident log, which the coalition's board would review at its next meeting. A written apology was sent to Adese's business address the following week, signed by the coalition chair, and the board voted at that meeting to require 2-witness digital confirmation for any vendor spot reassignment, which meant no single coordinator on a busy morning could redirect a paid reservation based on a clipboard and an assumption. The motion passed without dissent. It was referred to, in the minutes, as the new standard. The person who proposed it, Priscilla Vance, called it common sense. Nora bought the celadon bowl she had been thinking about since the winter listing, a wide, low piece with a surface that looked, depending on how you tilted it, like still water or like light through leaves. She carried it home in the canvas tote she'd brought for that purpose, and set it on the shelf above her kitchen window, where the afternoon light found it. She thought, walking home, about what she had seen that morning. Not the drama of it. There had been no real drama, no raised voices, no scene. What she thought about was the stillness. The way Adese had stood at that folding table with her confirmation sheet and her unhurried hands, not performing composure, but simply having it. The way you have something you've earned. The way the row had gathered around her, not as a crowd, not as a protest, but as a community that recognized one of its own, being treated as less, and decided, quietly, collectively, that this was not something it would watch without response. 11 people who had not coordinated, had not made a plan, had simply shown up and refused to begin without her. That was the thing, Nora thought, setting her key in her door. That was the whole of it. Not who Adese turned out to be. Everyone on that row already knew who she was. Not a secret or a revelation or a title on a card. Just 9 years of showing up and doing beautiful work, and treating everyone who stopped at that corner with the same level courtesy she had offered Darren Witt, even when he had given her every reason not to. Just that. And the community that grows up around that kind of steadiness, without anyone announcing it, without anyone planning it. She put the bowl on the shelf. The afternoon light came through the window and touched its surface, and it looked like she had known it would look, and she was satisfied. Down at the fair, at the south end of Craftsman Row, Adese Ose's booth ran until 5. She sold 19 pieces. At 4:40, she wrapped the last purchase of the day for a woman who had driven from the next county, and apologized for arriving so close to closing, and Adese told her she had plenty of time and asked whether she wanted the piece in blue paper or brown. She chose blue. Adese wrapped it twice, the way she always did, and set it in the bag, and said she'd see her next year. The woman thanked her and walked back toward the fountain, and Adese began to fold the blue canvas shade, and the fair wound down around her the way it always did, the same way it had wound down 9 years in a row, in this space, at this corner, in the last light of a long June day.